Behind the glass jars and rainbow displays of Carlo's Candy Emporium lay secrets that 8-year-old Sugar had never imagined. Each recipe wasn't just about sugar and syrup, it was about memories, traditions, and the alchemy of turning simple ingredients into pure joy. But with the shop closing and Grandpa Carlo's arthritis making candy making impossible, Sugar was about to inherit something far more precious than recipes. She was about to learn the real magic behind every sweet creation. This is the story of a little girl who discovered that the most important ingredients in life can't be measured in cups or teaspoons, and a grandfather who taught her that sometimes the sweetest lessons come from the most bitter endings. Sugar Williams had spent every Saturday of her 8 years at Carlo's Candy Emporium, watching her grandfather Carlo transform ordinary ingredients into extraordinary magic. The shop had been in their family for 3 generations, and to Sugar, it was more than a business, it was a wonderland where dreams came wrapped in colorful cellophane. That's why the "store closing" sign in the window hit her like a sledgehammer to the heart. "Grandpa Carlo," she burst through the door, her voice breaking. "What does that sign mean?" Carlo looked up from behind the counter, his once steady hands now trembling as he tried to tie a ribbon around a box of chocolates. At 82, his fingers were gnarled with arthritis, and Sugar could see the pain in his eyes every time he moved. "Ah, mia cara," he said softly, using the Italian endearment he'd called her since she was born. "Come, sit with your old nonno. We need to talk." Sugar climbed onto her usual stool behind the counter, surrounded by glass jars filled with peppermint humbugs, chocolate truffles, and hand-pulled taffy. The sweet smell that had always comforted her now seemed tinged with sadness. "The doctors say my hands can't do this work anymore," Carlo explained, flexing his fingers with obvious difficulty. "The arthritis is too painful." After 60 years, Carlo's Candy Emporium must close. "But Grandpa, this is your life. This is our place." Carlo smiled sadly. "No, Sugar. This shop was my gift to the world. But you are my life. And I still have one final gift to give you." "What do you mean?" Carlo's eyes twinkled with the same mischief Sugar had seen when he taught her to pull taffy. "The recipes, cara mia. All of them. But not just the ingredients, the stories. The real magic behind every single sweet." That afternoon, Sugar learned that they had exactly 6 weeks before the shop would close forever. The building had been sold, and by Christmas, Carlo's Candy Emporium would be just a memory. 6 weeks to learn everything? Sugar asked, overwhelmed. "Not everything, little one. The important things. The secrets that make our candy special." Sugar looked around the shop with new eyes. She had always seen the candy making as fun, but now she realized she was about to lose something irreplaceable. The weight of preserving 3 generations of family tradition suddenly rested on her 8-year-old shoulders. "Where do we start?" she asked, pulling out a notebook she'd brought from school. Carlo smiled. "We start where all good stories begin, at the beginning. With my nana's first recipe." He moved slowly to an old wooden cabinet behind the counter and pulled out a metal box, worn smooth by decades of handling. "This," he said reverently, "contains every recipe that built this shop. But more importantly, it contains every story that built this family." Sugar opened the box with trembling hands. Inside were dozens of recipe cards, some written in faded Italian, others in Carlo's careful English handwriting, many stained with chocolate and dusted with powdered sugar. Each recipe tells a story, sugar. And each story teaches a lesson about life. The next Saturday, Carlo taught Sugar her first official recipe, Nana Maria's caramel al burro, butter caramels that had been the shop's signature for 60 years. "Why this one first?" Sugar asked, tying on her small apron. "Because caramel cannot be rushed, and neither can wisdom." They started with simple ingredients, sugar, butter, cream, and vanilla. But as they worked, Sugar discovered that making perfect caramel was like conducting a symphony. Every element had to come together at exactly the right moment. "The sugar must melt slowly," Carlo explained, his arthritic hands guiding Sugar's on the wooden spoon. "If you rush it, it burns. If you're too slow, it never develops the right flavor." Sugar watched the sugar granules slowly transform from white crystals to golden liquid to deep amber. It took 40 minutes of constant stirring and careful temperature monitoring. "This is taking forever," Sugar complained. "Ah, but look what happens when we wait," Carlo said, adding the cream at the precise moment. The mixture bubbled and steamed, transforming into silky, golden perfection. When they finally cut the cooled caramel into perfect squares, Sugar bit into one and closed her eyes. It was better than any store-bought candy she'd ever tasted. "Why does it taste so much better?" "Because patience lives in every bite," Carlo said. "When you rush through life, you miss the transformation. Good things, caramel, friendships, dreams, they all need time to develop properly." Sugar wrote in her notebook, "Caramel recipe number 1, patience makes everything sweeter." As the weeks passed, Sugar began to understand that Carlo wasn't just teaching her to make candy, he was teaching her to live. The chocolate truffle recipe taught her about balance. Life, like chocolate, needs both bitter and sweet to be perfect. The peppermint humbugs taught her about resilience. See how we pull the candy until it's strong? People are the same, stretching makes us stronger, not broken. The hand-pulled taffy lesson was about cooperation. One person cannot make taffy alone. It requires two people pulling together, just like marriage, like friendship, like family. But it was the Italian nougat recipe that gave Sugar her first real glimpse into Carlo's past. "This recipe," Carlo said, handling the card with extra care, "this one saved my family's life." "What do you mean?" Carlo's eyes grew distant. "During the war, when I was a boy in Italy, we had no money, no food. But my mother, she could make nougat from honey, egg whites, and whatever nuts we could find. She sold it in the market, and that money kept us alive." Sugar stopped stirring the honey mixture. "Really?" "Every piece of nougat was hope, Sugar. Every sale meant another day we could survive. When we came to America with nothing, this recipe was our first business." He pointed to the old photograph on the wall, a young couple standing in front of a tiny storefront. "Your great-grandmother Maria and your great-grandfather Giuseppe. They started with one recipe and built all of this." Sugar looked around the shop with new appreciation. Every jar, every display case, every sweet smell had been built on courage and hope, one piece of nougat at a time. As word spread that Carlo's was closing, regular customers began stopping by to share their own memories. Sugar learned that the candy shop had been more than a business, it had been the heart of the neighborhood. Mrs. Henderson told Sugar about buying penny candy during the Depression. Your great-grandmother would always give us extra when times were hard. She understood that sometimes children need sweetness more than their parents need profit. Mr. Jackson remembered coming in as a teenager in the 1960s. Your grandfather taught me to make chocolate roses for my girlfriend. Been married 45 years now, and I still make them for our anniversary. Young parents shared stories of bringing their children for their first taste of homemade chocolate, continuing traditions their own parents had started. Why does everyone have so many stories about our shop? Sugar asked Carlo one evening as they cleaned up. Because, cara mia, we weren't just selling candy. We were selling moments. Joy. Comfort. Celebration. When someone bites into our chocolate, they don't just taste cocoa, they taste the love we put into making it. That's when Sugar understood the real secret ingredient in every recipe, love. Is that why our candy tastes different from store candy? Exactly. Mass-produced candy is made by machines that don't care. Our candy is made by hands that do care, by hearts that want to bring happiness to others. Sugar added to her notebook, the secret ingredient is always love. As Carlo's arthritis worsened, Sugar had to take over more of the actual candy making. Some days, Carlo's hands hurt too much to hold a spoon, so he would direct Sugar through each step while sitting on a stool. I'm scared I'll mess it up, Sugar confessed while attempting to temper chocolate for the first time. Mistakes are how we learn, Carlo said. See this batch that didn't set properly? We'll melt it down and try again. Nothing is wasted if you learn from it. Sugar's first attempts were far from perfect. Her caramels were sometimes too soft, her chocolate sometimes seized up into grainy lumps, and her hand-pulled candy broke more often than it stretched. But Carlo never criticized. Instead, he helped her understand what went wrong and why. Cooking is chemistry, Sugar, but candy making is alchemy. You're not just combining ingredients, you're transforming them into something magical. And magic takes practice. The day Sugar successfully made her first batch of perfect chocolate truffles, she burst into tears. Why are you crying, mia cara? They're beautiful. Because you won't be here to see me make them when I'm older. Carlo pulled her close. Oh, but I will. Every time you make these recipes, every time you share them with someone you love, I'll be right there. That's how families live forever, through the traditions we pass down. 3 weeks before closing, Sugar made a discovery that changed everything. She was organizing the recipe box when she found a section she'd never seen before, cards labeled, special orders, in Carlo's handwriting. Grandpa, what are these? Carlo looked at the cards and smiled mysteriously. Ah, you found my secret project. Those are very special recipes, Sugar. She read the cards aloud, anniversary chocolates for the Johnsons. Get well cookies for Mrs. Chen. Birthday cake truffles for little Tommy's celebration. I don't understand. For 30 years, I've been creating custom candy for special moments in people's lives. When someone was sick, I made candy to cheer them up. When couples were celebrating anniversaries, I created chocolates to match their love story. When children had birthdays, I designed flavors just for them. Sugar looked through dozens of cards, each one telling a story of Carlo reaching out to touch someone's life during their important moments. But why didn't you charge extra for these? because the joy on their faces was payment enough. You see, sugar, business isn't just about making money. It's about being part of your community's story. Sugar realized that Carlo hadn't just been a candy maker, he had been a healer, a celebrant, a keeper of the neighborhood's sweetest memories. Will you teach me how to do this too? That's exactly what I've been doing, cara mia. Every recipe I've taught you, every story I've shared, it's all been preparing you to understand that making candy is really about making people happy. As their time together grew shorter, Carlo encouraged Sugar to do something he'd never done, create her own recipes. But I'm just a kid. I can't invent candy. Innovation comes from understanding the basics so well that you can play with them, Carlo explained. You know how each ingredient behaves now. What would happen if you combined the techniques from different recipes? Sugar's first creation was a disaster, a chocolate caramel nougat combination that wouldn't set properly and tasted like sweet soup. But her second attempt, inspired by her favorite ice cream flavor, was genius, chocolate mint truffles with crushed candy cane pieces that created tiny explosions of cool sensation. These are incredible! Carlo exclaimed, genuinely impressed. What do you call them? Winter surprise truffles, Sugar said proudly. And what's the story behind them? Sugar thought carefully. They're for when people need a little surprise in their life. The mint wakes you up and reminds you that even in the coldest times, there can be something refreshing and new. Carlo beamed with pride. You understand perfectly. You're not just following recipes anymore, you're creating experiences. That day, Sugar added her first original recipe to the family collection, signing it, Sugar Williams, age 8, apprentice candy maker. Word of the shop's closing had spread throughout the neighborhood, and people began organizing to help. The local newspaper wrote a feature story about Carlo's 60-year legacy. The elementary school asked Sugar to give a presentation about family traditions. But the most touching response came from Carlo's longtime customers, who started a petition to declare the shop a local historical landmark. They want to save the shop? Sugar asked hopefully. No, cara mia. The building must still be sold. But they want to preserve the memory of what happened here. The petition gathered over 500 signatures, and the city council agreed to install a plaque commemorating Carlo's Candy Emporium and its role in the community. Why is this important to so many people? Sugar wondered. Because we were part of their stories, Carlo explained. Every Valentine chocolate, every Christmas candy cane, every birthday treat, we were there for their sweet moments. When you're part of people's happy memories, they don't forget you. Sugar began to understand that closing the shop wasn't just the end of a business, it was the end of an era for the entire neighborhood. In the last week before closing, Carlo taught Sugar the 3 most important recipes, the ones he'd saved for last. The first was Nana's Comfort Cookies, simple butter cookies that Maria had made whenever someone in the family was sad or scared. These cookies don't just fill your stomach, Carlo explained as they shaped the dough. They fill your heart. When someone you love is hurting, these say, you are not alone, better than any words. The second was Victory Chocolates, dark chocolate squares infused with espresso that Giuseppe had created to celebrate good news. When someone achieves something special, a promotion, a graduation, a new baby, these chocolates help them savor the moment. The final recipe was the most precious, love letters, handwritten messages in white chocolate on dark chocolate cards. "These are for the most important times," Carlo said, his voice thick with emotion. "When words alone aren't enough, when you need to show someone how much they mean to you." As they practiced piping delicate white chocolate letters onto dark chocolate surfaces, Sugar realized Carlo was teaching her to write love in edible form. "Who did you make these for, Grandpa?" "Your grandmother, when we were courting. Your father, when he graduated college. Your mother, when you were born. And now." He picked up a chocolate card he'd been working on. In perfect white script, it read, "For Sugar, who makes life sweeter every day." Sugar's eyes filled with tears as she carefully bit into the chocolate message, literally tasting her grandfather's love. The final day of Carlo's Candy Emporium felt like a celebration and a funeral at the same time. Regular customers lined up around the block to buy one last piece of candy and share their memories. Sugar worked alongside Carlo, wrapping purchases and listening to story after story about how the shop had touched people's lives. Mrs. Murphy bought caramels and told Sugar about bringing her children there every Friday for 20 years. "Your grandfather watched my babies grow up, one piece of candy at a time." The Thompson twins, now in their 50s, bought the last box of chocolate truffles. "We've been coming here since we were younger than you, Sugar. This place is in our DNA." Young mother Jenny Chin bought peppermint humbugs and whispered to Sugar, "I want my daughter to taste what I tasted when I was her age, even if it's the last time." By evening, the display cases were empty, the glass jars cleaned out, and the cash register had rung its final sale. As Carlo turned the "open" sign to "closed" for the last time, Sugar felt like her heart might break. "It's really over," she whispered. "No, mia cara," Carlo said, pulling her close. "It's transformed. The building may be empty, but everything that mattered, the recipes, the stories, the love, that all lives in you now." 2 days after the shop closed, Carlo surprised Sugar with a visit to her house, carrying a large wrapped box. "What's this, Grandpa?" "Open it and see." Inside was a complete miniature candy-making setup, a small copper pot, wooden spoons, candy thermometers, silicone molds, and a collection of basic ingredients, all sized perfectly for a child. "You gave me the recipes and the stories," Carlo explained, "but you need the tools to keep making memories." Along with the equipment was a leather-bound journal with Sugar's name embossed on the cover. "This is for your new recipes, your new stories. The shop may be closed, but the tradition continues." Sugar hugged her grandfather tightly. "Will you help me set it up?" "Of course. And every Saturday, if you want, we can make candy together in your kitchen instead of the shop." "It won't be the same." "No," Carlo agreed. "It will be different. But different can be beautiful too." That Saturday, Sugar's kitchen became a miniature version of Carlo's Candy Emporium. They made butter caramels, just like her first lesson, but this time Sugar did most of the work while Carlo provided gentle guidance. "How does it feel?" Carlo asked as they cut the finished caramels. "Strange," Sugar admitted. "But also, exciting. Like we're starting something new instead of just ending something old." "Exactly. Endings are also beginnings, cara mia. The shop gave us 60 years of joy, but now you can create your own joy wherever you go." Sugar's parents joined them for the tasting, and her father got emotional when he bit into the caramel. "This tastes exactly like the ones from the shop," he said in amazement. "Because it's made with the same love," Sugar said, unconsciously echoing her grandfather's teachings. That evening, Sugar made her first entry in her new recipe journal, day one of continuing the tradition. "Today I learned that magic isn't about the place, it's about the people and the love they put into their work." As weeks passed, Sugar began sharing her candy-making skills with others. She made chocolate roses for her teacher's birthday, using the technique Carlo had taught Mr. Jackson decades earlier. She brought homemade peppermint humbugs to her classmates, explaining the stretching technique and the lessons it taught about resilience. When her neighbor Mrs. Peterson was feeling sad about her cat dying, Sugar made a batch of Nana's comfort cookies and delivered them with a handwritten note, "For when you need sweetness in a sad time." "How did you know exactly what I needed?" Mrs. Peterson asked, tears in her eyes. "My grandpa taught me that candy isn't just about taste, it's about timing and caring," Sugar explained. Word spread through the neighborhood about Sugar's thoughtful candy gifts, and soon she was getting requests for custom creations, just like Carlo had done. "I think you're becoming a healer like your grandfather," Sugar's mother observed. "What do you mean?" "You're using candy to help people feel better." "That's a special gift." Sugar added to her journal, "I'm learning that making people happy is the best recipe of all." Inspired by Carlo's encouragement to innovate, Sugar began creating new flavor combinations and techniques. She invented friendship fudge, with layers representing different personality types working together. She developed courage caramels, infused with cinnamon and ginger to warm people up from the inside when they need to be brave. Her most ambitious creation was memory chocolates, truffles with surprise centers that reminded people of specific happy moments, vanilla cake centers for birthdays, peppermint for Christmas, strawberry for summer picnics. "Where do you get these ideas?" Carlo asked, genuinely impressed by her creativity. "From listening to people's stories," Sugar replied. "Everyone has flavors that make them happy. I just try to figure out what those are and put them into candy." Carlo realized that Sugar had internalized the most important lesson: great candy making isn't about following recipes perfectly, it's about understanding people's emotional needs and meeting them through thoughtful creation. 6 months after the shop closed, Sugar received an unexpected invitation. The new community center was having a grand opening celebration, and they wanted her to provide homemade candy for the event. "They asked for me specifically?" Sugar couldn't believe it. "Word has gotten around about your skills," her father explained. "People remember what your grandfather did for the community, and they see that same spirit in you." Sugar spent weeks preparing for the event, making hundreds of pieces of candy using all the techniques Carlo had taught her, plus several of her own innovations. The night of the celebration, Sugar set up a small booth with Carlo beside her. As people tasted her candy and shared memories of the old shop, Sugar realized something wonderful was happening. "Grandpa, they're not just remembering your shop," she whispered. "They're getting excited about what I'm doing now." "That's how traditions work," Carlo replied proudly. "They don't stay exactly the same, they grow and change while keeping their heart intact." By the end of the evening, Sugar had received requests for wedding favors, birthday party treats, and holiday gifts. People wanted her to be part of their special moments, just as Carlo had been. A year after Carlo's Candy Emporium closed, Sugar received the surprise of her life. The family that had bought the building approached her parents with an unexpected proposal. "We'd like to rent the storefront space to Sugar," Mr. Davidson explained. "We've watched her develop her candy-making skills, and we think the neighborhood needs what she offers." "But she's only 9 years old," Sugar's mother protested. "We're not talking about a full business operation," Mrs. Davidson clarified. "More like a weekend candy stand, with adult supervision. A way for her to serve the community while learning about responsibility and entrepreneurship." Sugar could hardly breathe. "You mean I could use the old shop?" "If you want to. And if your parents and grandfather think you're ready." Sugar looked at Carlo, who was smiling wider than she'd seen since the closing announcement. "What do you think, Nano?" "I think," Carlo said slowly, "that traditions are meant to continue, even when they take new forms." Sugar's Sweet Spot opened 6 months later, occupying the same space where Carlo's Candy Emporium had thrived for 60 years. But it was clearly a new generation's interpretation of the family tradition. Instead of rows of glass jars, Sugar had created interactive stations where children could watch candy being made. Instead of just selling finished products, she offered candy-making classes for kids and adults. The walls displayed the story of Carlo's legacy alongside Sugar's innovations, creating a bridge between past and future. "How does it feel to be back in the shop?" a local reporter asked Sugar during the opening celebration. "It feels like coming home," Sugar replied, "but also like starting an adventure. Grandpa Carlo taught me that the magic isn't in the building, it's in the love you put into your work and the joy you bring to other people." Carlo, now 83 and moving more slowly but still sharp as ever, watched his granddaughter teach a group of children how to pull taffy. "You realize what you've done?" Sugar's father asked him. "What's that?" "You didn't just save the family recipes. You created a new kind of candy maker. Sugar doesn't just follow your traditions, she's building on them." Carlo nodded with deep satisfaction. "That's exactly what I hoped would happen. Traditions that don't grow die. But traditions that adapt and evolve, those live forever." Today, Sugar is 12 years old and runs weekend candy-making workshops that attract families from across the city. Her notebook of original recipes has grown to match Carlo's in size, and her understanding of the connection between food and feelings continues to deepen. But the most important lesson she learned didn't come from any recipe. "Grandpa," she said one Saturday as they cleaned up after a particularly successful chocolate-making class, "I understand now why you weren't sad about closing the shop." "Oh? Why is that?" "Because you knew the real treasure wasn't the building or even the business. It was the knowledge and the love. And those things don't need a specific place to exist, they just need people who care enough to keep them alive." Carlo pulled his granddaughter close. "And do you understand why I chose you to carry on the tradition?" "Because I love making candy?" "No, mia cara. Because you love making people happy. The candy is just the tool. The real magic is your heart." As the afternoon sun streamed through the shop windows, casting rainbow patterns on the walls through the jars of colorful sweets, Sugar understood that she hadn't just inherited a family business, she had inherited a mission to spread sweetness in a world that sometimes forgets to taste the joy in simple moments. Every evening when Sugar locks up the shop, she can still hear Carlo's voice in the rustle of candy wrappers and the gentle hum of the old chocolate tempering machine. The secret ingredient is always love. patience makes everything sweeter. We're not just selling candy, we're selling moments of joy. And in carrying forward these lessons, sugar has learned the sweetest truth of all. The best traditions don't just preserve the past, they create a future worth savoring. This story teaches us that endings are often disguised beginnings, and that the most precious gifts come wrapped in the form of knowledge, wisdom, and love passed from one generation to the next. Sugar's journey shows us that tradition isn't about doing things exactly the same way forever, it's about understanding the heart behind the actions and finding new ways to honor that spirit. Because in the end, whether we're making candy or making a life, the secret ingredient is always the love we put into our work and the joy we bring to others.